Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Fórsa's event on navigating auto-enrolment. My name is Katie Morgan. I'm one of Fórsa's National Secretaries, and I am delighted to welcome you to this online event today. The event is being recorded so we can share it with other members who aren't able to make the webinar today. I am joined by Dr Laura Bambrick, Social Policy Officer with the Irish Congress of Trade Unions, and Paul Orde, Assistant Principal from the Auto-Enrolment Programme Management Office in the Department of Social Protection. I will now hand it over to Laura, who will chair the event today. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie, and thank you, Fórsa, for the invitation to be here today. And thanks to everybody that's joining us online. So as was mentioned, my name is Laura. And for those of you who haven't met me, within Congress, a big part of my job is looking after workers' income and their living standards when they have a break in employment. So that could be time out while you're having a baby, or maybe you've lost your job, or you're sick, and when you retire. And retirement for most adults will be their longest period without a wage. So that means I spend a lot of my time looking at pensions and ensuring that pensions are good quality for our members. And that can be things like protecting the pension age, ensuring that the state pension is sustainable in the future, and since 2019, working with the Department of Social Protection officials to ensure and develop the design of auto-enrolment to ensure that our members all have access to an occupational pension. Now, I'm no Pollyanna. I recognise that pensions have a very bad reputation as being dull. In fact, our former General Secretary, now Chair of the Pensions Authority, had a great saying. He said that pensions are a dull, boring topic for anyone under 40. At 50, the topic becomes mildly interesting, and at 60, it's riveting. Unfortunately, at 60, it's very hard to sort out your pension at that age. And that's what auto-enrolment is doing in a nutshell. It's getting workers to be active, saving for a retirement and into a pension without having to deal with the boring details pension bores like myself live and breathe for. So next up, we're going to have Paul giving you a presentation for the next 20 to 25 minutes on the nuts and bolts of how auto-enrolment will work. Then we'll have an opportunity to take your questions. And so you can put your questions in through the question and answers or the question and answer Q&A function through Teams. Now, please keep these brief so that we can get to as many questions as we can today. So I'd like to welcome Paul and thank him for giving his time today at what is a very busy time for the department. Thank you all.
So, thank you very much. My name's Paul, and I'm just going to give you a brief overview of my future fund, including the eligibility, the contribution rates, and how the scheme's going to work. So employees that are eligible for auto-enrolment will meet these three eligibility criteria. The first one is that they earn more than €20,000 or more across all employments. The second one is that they're aged between 23 and 66. And the third is that they're not already contributing to a pension through payroll. Now, employees who earn less than 20,000 a year and who are aged over 18 and under 66 will also be able to opt into the scheme. All employees whose pay is reported to revenue in the Republic of Ireland will be potentially eligible for auto-enrolment. So this means that contract type isn't taken into account. So short-term contracts, part-time workers, they'll all be considered for the eligibility checks, and they'll also be able to opt into My Future Fund. Now, people who are self-employed or not currently working and earning won't be eligible for My Future Fund. Now, we get an awful lot of questions around multiple employments and how this is going to work. So what we find is that giving an example normally works a wee bit better than trying to give a long-winded explanation. So you'll see on this slide here that this person has two jobs. In job A, they're earning €10,000 a year. Job B, they're earning €15,000 a year. So although in each of those jobs individually, they're under the €20,000 threshold, when it's combined, it's 25,000, and they'll be eligible to be auto-enrolled, assuming they meet the age criteria. So in this scenario, we'll be taking the 1.5% of gross pay contributions for year one from the employer and from the employee. The employer will pay based on the pay that they pay the employee, and then the state will top up by 0.5%. So if you look at this example, this will equate to an annual contribution of €875 towards that person's My Future Fund savings. Now, if we take another example here, where in job A, there's still no pension, job B, there's an existing pension paid through payroll. So the combined income, again, is taken into account for the eligibility criteria, even though the person has existing pension coverage in one of those employments. However, the contributions will only be paid in the job where there are no existing pension contributions through payroll. So again, in this example, it's 1.5% of that 10,000 from both the employer and the employee, and a 0.5% top up from the state, which brings the total contributions to €350 towards their My Future Fund savings pot. Now, it adds a layer of complexity to how we're doing these calculations, but what it means is that anyone working multiple part-time jobs or in short-term contracts isn't going to lose out and isn't going to lose out on the benefits of My Future Fund. So you'll see now these are the contribution rates for My Future Fund. They're going to be set, and it won't be possible, at least in the initial years, to contribute more or less than these rates. So you'll see that they're being phased in at 1.5% for the first 3 years. That then moves up to 3%, 4.5%, and eventually 6% from employee and employer, and 2% then from the state top-up. So important to note here that phasing in is in the first 10 years of the scheme, not in the first 10 years of an employee's enrolment or of an employee's career. So for instance, if someone was to start work in 2033, they'd be paying at the 4.5%. Anyone that joins after 2035 will be on the 6% rate. Now, I'll just go through some of the opt-out, suspend, and re-enrollment options for people. So these are going to be key choices that employees will be able to make. This is done outside of your employer. You don't need to inform your employer. It's purely for the employee. You'll be able to do it through an online portal that's going to be provided for people. So when an employee opts out, all contributions will cease from the employer, the employee, and from the state. The opt-out option will be open to employees after 6 months of enrolment or re-enrolment. So available in months 7 and 8. That's the opt-out window that employees will have. There's a second option then, always to suspend your contributions. Now, again, this is after 6 months mandatory participation, but you can suspend at any time. If you choose to suspend, you'll suspend for a minimum of 12 months, up to a maximum of 2 years. During that time, again, all contributions are stopped. So from the employer, the employee, and from the state, all those contributions are suspended for that period. And just, I suppose, to point out one of the main differences between those, in the opt-out, when you opt out, you'll receive a refund of your contributions up to that point, or in the case of opt-out after 6 months after a rate increase, you'll receive the difference in the old and the new rates. Now those refunds are payable to the employee only. Your employer and state contributions will stay in your savings pot and will remain to be invested for you. Now, re-enrollment, again, is going to be handled entirely by NERSA, so they'll be keeping track. So it's the National Automatic Enrolment Retirement Savings Authority. They'll be keeping track of who's due to be re-enrolled. So after 2 years of either opt-out or suspension, they'll reassess your eligibility. Assuming you're still eligible for My Future Fund, you'll be re-enrolled back into it, and you'll start paying at the prevailing rate when you're re-enrolled. So if we just go through some of the key features here now, the pot follows member approach is one of the main key features that we've designed based on learnings from other countries. And what this means is that you'll have a single savings pot in the system no matter how many times you move jobs throughout your career and no matter how many jobs you have at any one point. So this is all going to be handled directly by NERSA. And they'll manage that for you. They'll keep a track of that for you. The next point is the investment, and this is to ensure that savings go as far as they can. Savings are going to be invested for participants. 3 investment managers have been chosen through a procurement process, and they're Amundi, BlackRock, and Irish Life investment managers. So once the contributions are paid over, NERSA will then collect those, pool them, and send them to the investment managers, and it'll be split evenly across the different investment managers. Each of those investment managers is providing a high, medium, and low risk fund for participants. Those funds will then form the basis of the 4 fund strategies. So as well as a high, medium, and low risk strategy, there's going to be a default strategy that all participants are going to be placed in to begin with. The default strategy works on a life cycling basis. So what this means is it'll gradually de-risk the closer you get to retirement age. So what that means, it's designed that you won't have to make complex financial decisions in order to still be able to get a good pension provision at the end of it. And finally, after all the saving and investing, we come to the drawdown. In the initial years, retirement drawdown will be done in a lump sum paid out to employees. I suppose just to head off any questions on that, the sort of tax treatments of that is being aligned with PRSAs. So the existing lump sum tax treatments will be applied, and it's likely, at least in the initial years, that then the trivial tax treatments will be applied to the remainder of those savings. And I suppose also important to note that while initially, yes, that will be a lump sum drawdown, as the scheme progresses and evolves and beds in, it's likely that NERSA will be developing more products for retirement. So I'll just run through some of the functions of NERSA, and this is really showing that big admin burden that has been talked about is largely falling on NERSA and not on employers or employees. So as I mentioned before, the National Automatic Enrolment Retirement Savings Authority, or NERSA, has been established to administer My Future Fund. So NERSA has a board that's answerable to the Minister and the Oireachtas and will be supervised by the Pensions Authority. Now the body will bear the bulk of the admin work, and just to give you an idea, we'll go through some of the main ones here. So NERSA is going to determine the eligibility using revenue payroll data over a 13-week look-back period. They'll then inform employers when an employee has been auto-enrolled through a payroll notification, or AEPN, which is an auto-enrolment payroll notification. And NERSA will then collect the employee and the employer contributions from the employer, and will collect the state top-up separately. As I said before, they're going to manage and facilitate the opt-in, opt-out, and suspension options. You'll be able to do that via an online portal for employees, or if you want, you can always contact NERSA directly and go through a paper route for that as well. So they'll manage the employee's savings pot as well, which means that they'll look after ensuring that it's invested in line with the employee's choices. And they'll manage the re-enrollment and exempt employment. So re-enrollment, if you've suspended or opted out after 2 years and you're brought back in, NERSA is going to keep track of that. So even as an employee, you don't need to worry about tracking that yourself. Exempt employment then refers to if you decide to join a company pension scheme, you're then exempted from auto-enrolment in respect of that employment. So NERSA will manage the contract with investment managers, ensuring that they meet the terms of the contract, and they'll then pay out at retirement to participants in the scheme. An important one as well is that NERSA will be monitoring compliance with the legislation. So for employers, this means a few things. It means paying contributions on time, not forcing employees to opt out or suspend, and not penalising employees for their participation in the scheme. NERSA are also going to manage the public area website and the employer and the employee portals that will allow employees to make those decisions around opt-in, opt-out. As employees, you'll also be able to go in, see your contributions, see your savings, and see your investment growth, as well as an annual benefit statement that will be provided every year for employees. So I'm just going to explain very quickly how this is going to work in a little bit more detail. So this is the bit of the technical bit. So NERSA are going to use revenue payroll data to identify eligible employees. This will be pretty quick for employees that already have an earnings record, but it could take up to 13 weeks in the case that they don't have. So that look-back period is 13 weeks of NERSA reviewing revenue payroll data, and the €20,000 threshold is then prorated to €5,000 over that 13 weeks. There's good reason for doing this. It means that we can enroll staff or employees quicker than perhaps taking a full year to do it. It's roughly a quarter, so it gives us a good idea that someone's earnings are going to hit that €20,000 in the year. A 13-week look-back period is on a rolling process, so it means that even if you don't hit the €20,000 initially, NERSA will continue to assess to see if you're likely to reach that threshold in the future. So then NERSA will send that AEPN to the employer. That'll inform them that you've been enrolled. The employer, through their payroll software, will then get latest AEPN. They'll apply that for the contribution percentages to be applied, and then they'll have to pay those contributions and return the contribution file no later than 6:30 p.m. on the employee's pay date. NERSA then collects those contributions, pool them, and distribute them to the investment managers in accordance, again, with the employee's choices. So the main points of contact for My Future Fund for employees will be through NERSA. And this means that NERSA is going to be responsible for enrolling eligible employees, collecting contributions, sending the contributions to be invested, and managing the opt-in, opt-out, and suspension and re-enrollment for participants, and then again paying out the savings at drawdown. So participants will be able to make choices around their investment strategy. They'll be able to always switch to the high, medium, or low if they want, or stay in the default if that's their choice as well. And to make this, again, as easy and straightforward for participants, all of this will be able to be done through the employee portal that's going to launch in early January. Now, there's significant benefits, I suppose, to employees of My Future Fund, and it's been designed as an employee-centric scheme. So the legislation underpinning My Future Fund guarantees matching contributions from employers, as well as the state top-up. And this roughly means that for every €3 contributed by an employee, €7 goes towards your My Future Fund savings pot. So contributions as well, it's important to note, are calculated on gross pay. It's revenue's definition of gross pay. So what it means is we're not taking into account things like pensionable and non-pensionable pay like some pension schemes do. It's everything that is reported to revenue as your gross pay. So as well as that, as soon as employees are deemed eligible, they're going to be enrolled. This means no waiting periods. A lot of pensions right now will operate a 6-month waiting period, occupational pensions. That's not going to be the case here. Now, it could take up to 13 weeks before NERSA can determine your eligibility. But again, as soon as you're eligible, you'll be enrolled, and employees are always able to opt in before that point as well. So once the contributions are then paid over to NERSA, they become the employee or participant's personal property. And this carries all the protections with any personal property. This is written into the legislation, and it's very strong for that. Next is, and this is because of the sort of large numbers of people being enrolled and the rigorous procurement process carried out by the department, there's going to be very low fees. So The fees are likely to be, the admin fees are likely to be announced in the coming days and weeks. What we can say right now is that the investment management fee is going to be below 0.1%, making it exceptionally competitive when you look at other products in the market. And in addition to this, there's legislative powers and legal protections for employees. So NERSA is going to manage that compliance function. They have significant powers given to them through the legislation. This, at the first instance, is going to be ensuring that contributions are paid over on time. Where contributions are late to be paid over, there can be interest applied, fines and penalties on top of that. Employees will also have recourse through the WRC in the case that an employer has forced them to opt out, suspend, or penalise them for their participation in the scheme itself. So in addition to this, NERSA, as we said before, are acting in the best interest of the participants. We're seeing this already, and you might have seen in the papers recently, with work on secondary legislation to start looking at minimum contribution standards from the start of this scheme. And then I suppose later on, there'll be further standards developed as the contribution rates increase, just to ensure that no pension is less favourable than my future fund is going to be. So this is just a little sample of what you'll see on the employee portal. So you'll be able to see there your total contributions, and you'll see that sort of ring there. So you've got your contribution only makes up some of it, and then you see the employer contribution there, the state top up, and then that little bit of green at the bottom now. It is a full circle. We just didn't have that cut off on the slide, but that then shows your investment growth as well. So for employees, they can go in, they can see this, and they can see that it's not just them contributing. This is really a three-way partnership to ensure that people get a good retirement savings. So talking again just briefly about the investment strategies. As I said before, there's a default strategy that everyone's enrolled in to begin with. This de-risks the closer you get to retirement. So the age of 23, when you're brought in, you start off in the high risk, taking the advantage of the high risk growth in early years, and then the stability of low risk the closer you get to retirement. So based on age, participants will be placed into the high, medium, or low strategies or funds. So to explain quickly, employees under the age of 51 will be in the higher risk funds. 51 to 60, they then move to the medium risk, and 61 until retirement, they're moved into the low risk. Now, the primary difference between all these is the risk rating that's applied. That's again set out in the legislation. And the funds are going to be primarily made up of what's called UCITS, which are highly regulated funds. But in simple terms, I suppose what changes between each of those strategies is the mix between equities, bonds, and cash. So I just want to run through a couple of the sort of myths or pieces of misinformation that are out there. So one of the big ones that we've heard is that this is going to be a lot of admin burden, particularly for employers, and maybe for employees as well. We want to say, I suppose, that the truth is that the vast majority of that admin is going to be handled by NERSA themselves. You'll see that includes identifying eligible employees, enrolling employees, managing the opt-in, opt-out, and suspension options, and then paying out when you come to retirement. So there's a lot less, I suppose, admin when you compare that to administering an occupational pension. So employees will be able to use the portal that we just showed you to be able to manage those different choices, move between the investment strategies, and also if they want to opt in or suspend or opt out. So there's also been, I suppose, a recurring narrative throughout that My Future Fund is less beneficial to employees when compared to occupational schemes. Largely, this is based around the tax relief argument. So we're not here to give, I suppose, financial advice, but just to lay out some of the facts and some of the benefits in My Future Fund. So the state top-up is paid at a rate of €1 for every €3 participant contributes. And this works out roughly to an equivalent of 25% tax relief. So you can see, perhaps for people paying the standard rates of PAYE, it's more beneficial than a 20% tax relief. It's also important to note again that employer contributions are guaranteed with My Future Fund. So the contribution rate as well, and we touched on this earlier, is calculated on gross pay. Many occupational pensions use a narrower definition of pensionable and non-pensionable pay. Now, what this means is that my future fund will be assessing things like bonuses or commission rather than excluding them from the calculation. So again, touching on the fees, my future fund is going to have very low fees compared to some other products out there in the market. Now, this has a huge compounding effect, I suppose, as the savings go on and as you save more money. So these are sort of important things to consider as employees when you're considering your options. So the third one, another big one for us, is around the state pension. There were suggestions perhaps that this is being used to replace a state pension. We want to say categorically that's not the case. State pension is going to remain the bedrock of the Irish pensions landscape, and my future fund will sit alongside it and supplement it like any other occupational pension would. The contributory state pension is calculated purely on PRSI contributions, which are separate to my future fund contributions. So again, my future fund doesn't have any impact on your entitlements to the state pension. The non-contributory state pension, however, is means tested. So any of my future fund payments would be assessable the same way as any other pension payments would be. Now, there's also been suggestions that the savings could be raided by the state, especially in the case of an economic downturn. Again, we want to say that categorically this isn't the case. Like we said before, this is protected under legislation. This is going to be your own personal property as soon as those contributions are paid over. And that has protections the same as, constitutional protections the same as any other private property would. Important as well to note that there's no vesting periods. So this means that if you move jobs, after a few months, you keep all of your savings in your pot. That pot follows member approach as well is great for that because it means you're not having to track multiple pots, running the risk of fees eroding small pots. Now, we get a lot of questions, I suppose, from employees, and be happy to take some more after this, but just want to address some of the most common ones. So, questions around opt-in. So any employee that falls outside of the earnings threshold but is aged 18 or over and under 66 will have the option to opt in to My Future Fund. And you can do this using the My Future Fund employee online portal that's going to go live in January, or by contacting NERSA directly in January as well. So the employer doesn't need to know about an employee's intention to participate, and NERSA are going to use revenue payroll data to make a determination on whether you're eligible to enroll. And when an employee opts in, you have exactly the same rights and benefits as someone that's automatically enrolled into the scheme. And that again means NERSA managing that compliance function for you, and also you having recourse through the WRC in the case that you're forced to opt out, suspend, or penalised for your participation. So another one that we get a lot is around private PRSAs that aren't being paid through payroll. So there are these situations arise where people have pensions outside of payroll. In that case, NERSA won't have sight of this because they're using that revenue payroll data to determine eligibility. So there's a few options for participants or for employees in the case that you're already contributing outside of payroll. You can continue to contribute to the PRSA or pension outside of payroll and potentially be auto-enrolled as well. The other one is that you can cease contributions to the PRSA or pension outside of payroll. And again, it's likely you could be auto-enrolled assuming you meet the other eligibility criteria. And lastly, you can look to have your PRSA paid through payroll. So in the final scenario, once NERSA sees that pension contribution through payroll, you'll then be exempted for that particular employment that it refers to. And finally, again, there have been questions around the security of savings. So it's important to say that there's no state guarantee for those savings. As with any pension, there is a degree of risk in that investment piece. However, there's plenty of mitigating circumstances around that. So a rigorous procurement exercise has taken place to get, investment managers that are going to comply with the terms of the contract. They're using UCITS largely, which again are highly, highly regulated funds. And it's important to remember again that because of that employer contribution and the state top-up, contribution as an employee is being supplemented right from the start. So just before we finish up, there's, I think, 4 points to note and reiterate. So NERSA is going to have a robust compliance function. So as My Future Fund is ultimately an employee-centric scheme, NERSA is going to look to protect the interests of participants. This will mean making sure that contributions are paid on time so they can be invested, and taking action where bad behavior is identified to ensure that it's rectified, including fines, penalties, and the potential of prosecution. Employees, again, also have recourse through the WRC in the case that any of their rights set out in legislation aren't being respected. So secondly is, and again, you might have seen this in the press, is around basic minimum standards that are being developed through secondary legislation. So the intent of this, again, is to prevent a scenario where the contributions are less beneficial than My Future Fund. In the future, as the contribution rates increase, there'll be further standards developed in conjunction with the Pensions Authority to ensure that all pensions are at least as beneficial as My Future Fund. Again, to reiterate, there won't be waiting periods for auto-enrolment. So as soon as you start in employment, NERSA is going to begin assessing you for eligibility into the scheme. This could take up to 13 weeks, but if you've already been working and earning in the 13-week look back that's already taking place, you could be auto-enrolled immediately and start paying contributions from your first pay date in January. It's important as well, again, around that multiple employment part. Income from all employments is going to be considered for auto-enrolment. So anywhere where you're working, all of that income's added together, and they're going to look at that in totality. The advantage with auto-enrolment, again, and with My Future Fund is that that's all paid then into a single pot for you, rather than having multiple pots depending on how many jobs you have. And lastly, I suppose that 20,000 or the €5, as it's prorated, is an enrolment trigger. So once you're enrolled, you'll stay enrolled regardless of whether your income drops below €20,000 a year at any stage in the future. And just before we finish up, our website, gov.ie/auto-enrolment, is the primary source of information available online. There's sections there for employees, employers, and another on frequently asked questions. We also have a latest news section where there's news on the project, on the progress in the project, and also on any webinars that the department's hosting themselves. So we've got a playlist of videos as well for people in the department's YouTube channel, and that goes into a bit more depth around some of those things that I spoke about here. Each video is split into particular topics, so you can choose to dip into what you're interested in, or if you really want, you can watch them all one after another. And lastly, our contact information is also enrolment@welfare.ie. So if you have any questions that you want to ask us about the scheme, feel free to send that through to us, and we can share that email address with you afterwards. And then the My Future Fund contact details, this is to contact NERSA. There's a web chat service on myfuturefund.ie, which is now live, or you can call My Future Fund on the number that's on that slide there between 9 a.m. and 6 p.m. Monday to Friday, or you can always write to My Future Fund as well. So that's everything from me, and look forward to any questions that you might have.
That's great. Thanks so much for that, Paul. And it was so comprehensive. I think as we went slide by slide, you were answering people's questions, especially around a lot of the myth busting. But I should invite people again that if they do have a question, to use the Q&A function on Teams to put through your questions. So yes, really important what you were emphasizing there, that auto-enrolment isn't being designed to replace the state pension. There's a lot of fear-mongering out there about that. And also the fact that it is bad value, because we know that a lot of some of our members, but a lot of workers in general, they will be auto-enrolled precisely because their employer hasn't offered them a pension. So the fact that the employer will have to make a contribution. So we had one question come in from members working in the higher education sector, and I just want to get confirmation from you there. If people are between the ages of 23 and 60, if they're earning over that 20,000 and they're currently not paying into a pension through payroll, there is no exempt sectors. If they meet all those targets and they're not paying into a pension, they are going to be auto-enrolled. Is that the correct understanding of that?
Yes, so it's not based on sector of employment, it's not based on contract type, it's purely based on, I suppose, do you meet the age and earnings threshold, and are you already paying into a pension through payroll? I suppose just to maybe touch on a point you made before around it not being there to replace a state pension. As well, it's probably important to say that it's not there to replace occupational pensions either. This is just another offering within the pension space in Ireland, I suppose, for people that don't already have provision.
Perfect. So one of the other questions then we had come in to, how do employees then check that their employer has enrolled them for auto-enrolment? If they feel themselves they should be auto-enrolled?
Yeah, so I suppose there's a couple of ways. Because we've automated a lot of this through payroll software, you'll see deductions through your payslip. So you'll see, MFF employer and MFF employee on your payslip. Another thing you can do is everyone's able to go in and you'll use a verified MyGov ID. So as long as that's a verified account, that means you've got to have the PSE card and all that stuff. But for most people that have that, all you need to do is you go onto the portal, you use that information to log in. So you don't need to remember any other login details specifically for this, and you'll be able to see your contribution record then there, and that was that little circle that shows exactly what you've contributed, what your employer's put in, what the state's put in, and then any investment growth will be included in that as well. So I'd say that's probably your first protocol. If you have questions, come to NERSA, I suppose, as quickly as you have those questions. I suppose don't delay. There might be good reason why you're not seeing contributions, but talk to NERSA about it and they'll be able to hopefully get to the bottom of it for you.
And we'll just add to that, you can also talk to your union rep and your branch. You have that extra proofing there as a union member. So what about the reverse then? What about the first payslip comes in January and you're auto-enrolled, but you might be somebody that does low part-time hours, so you weren't expecting to be auto-enrolled. Maybe you've done some extra seasonal work in the run-up to Christmas that has bumped up your pay, but you feel you've been auto-enrolled, or you feel that you shouldn't be covered by auto-enrolment, but in January you are. Where do you go to there?
So,
apart from your union rep?
Yeah. So again, what I'd say is you go to NERSA. That will happen, I suppose, and because we're using that prorated €5,000, there will be instances where that happens. You can come and talk to NERSA about that. Given though, I suppose that contributions are starting at that low rate, what we'd say is as well, maybe stay in for the 6 months before the opt-out window opens and just see how that beds in for you. I mean, there is the increase in minimum wage as well coming this year, which should, I suppose, offset some of those contributions. So I suppose on minimum wage, and this is very back of the envelope sort of calculations, you'd be paying around €8 a week for your own contributions. But again, there's another €8 going in from your employer, and then there's the top up from the state. I'm not going to try and work out what a third of €8 is. My maths isn't that good. I should have. So exactly like that, you'll be able to go in and you'll be able to see, as time goes on, that what you've been contributing is actually sort of growing exponentially because of those additional contributions. So I suppose what we'd say is if you can afford it, stay the course. After 6 months, you have the option to opt out or or suspend. And again, that's up to 2 years.
And I should probably explain to people that's why automatically you can't opt out for those 6 months it's because we all know we're living in the real world. We understand the cost of living pressure, and people will look at that 1.5% deducted from their wage and think, oh, I could really do with that this week or this month. But over the 6 months, as you're seeing those 1.5% deductions from your own paycheck being matched by your employer, being topped up by the state, we do realise that, you know, this is money for nothing. So we are one of the last countries to move to auto-enrolment. It's hugely successful in every other country that it has been brought into. There's no reason to think that we will be different. So it will be interesting when it comes to that 6 months opt-out, how many people stay with it. And I guess going back to that minimum wage worker, if you think about it, 65 cents coming in on the minimum wage from the 1st of January. If you're caught by auto-enrolment also, it means 20 cents of that 65 cent raise will be going into your auto-enrolment pot, so you'd still be up the 45 cents. So we're hoping that will do it. Just one thing that's worth emphasising, and you touched there about people having recourse to the WRC. One of the scaremongering that we are hearing about is the cost of this to businesses, and that you know, if employers are forced to contribute to their employees' pension, it will result maybe in job losses or reduced hours. What can an employee do, especially maybe people that are on that call that have family or friends that are in workplaces that aren't unionised? What recourse have they if they're being pressured by the employer to opt out, putting it, you know, this is going to be the difference between your job or being able to give you your 36, 39 hours?
So again, yeah, it is that recourse through the WRC. But if we just go back to the cost element just very quickly, there's a number of things that have been built into this to, I suppose, keep costs lower for both employers and employees. Contributions are only payable up to €80,000. There's a threshold at €80,000. Once that's breached, contributions then cease for the year. Now, sort of important to point out that threshold isn't a hard stop at 80,000. What happens is, say you've earned 79,000 up to September, you're going to earn another 5,000 in October. You'll pay contributions on the full 5,000, but after that, it's then stopped. So that's part of the, you know, I suppose making it more affordable for businesses, and businesses will also be able to claim tax relief if they're paying corporation tax. For employees as well, again, we're phasing it in slowly so they can get used to it, the 1.5%. The €20,000 threshold as well is taken as a poverty reduction measure. So if someone is earning below that, they're not going to be automatically brought in. But you'll always have the choice if you think that you can afford it. By all means, you're able to opt in. I'd say again, you know, and maybe sound like a broken record, contact NERSA as well. In those cases, they might be best placed to advise you. But the WRC is there. You have legal protections in the legislation to prevent this sort of behaviour from happening as well.
Perfect. So we have other questions coming in from members that are in workplaces that don't offer a pension, so they are going to be auto-enrolled, but they've been proactive themselves and have a PRSA, which they are paying but not paying through payroll, which means they will be auto-enrolled. But they're wondering about then their tax relief situation, because they're going to be, in fact, paying two pensions for all intents and purposes through auto-enrollment, and then their private pension, which they're paying privately. How will those two, getting the auto-enrolment top-up and getting the full tax relief from PRSI, how will those two work?
So I suppose it's quite simple. It's completely separate. The auto-enrolment legislation doesn't impact on people's existing rights around tax relief for occupational pensions. So again, we're not here, I suppose, to give financial advice, and it's important to emphasise that. We're only here to give you the facts, and it's up to yourself either to get professional advice or to consider it for yourselves. But yeah, you'll be able to continue to claim that tax relief on a private pension, not through payroll. And I suppose it's also another instance where that could happen is you're in a pension in one employment and not for auto-enrolment. And sorry, you're in auto-enrolment for another employment. Again, those two systems will sort of operate side by side, and the tax relief entitlements aren't impacted by the state top-up element.
Because the top-up isn't seen as tax relief. Am I correct in understanding that? We are having some concerns really about the WRC protections around that against people being strong-armed into leaving. Is this something as part of the communication strategy going forward the department will be looking at, reminding workers the employers of their obligation not to, that they have to pay this contribution if their employees are in it, and their employees' protection for the WRC. Is this going to be part of the campaign going forward, rolled out?
Yeah, so, and I suppose we've already started to include it in advertising where it's made clear that auto-enrolment is an employment right, that there are legal obligations. NERSA is going to monitor the situation and see where that messaging maybe needs to be strengthened, where they need to target it to. Of course, that's all going to be looked at. I suppose our main thing around messaging right now is letting people know that this is coming. But again, if bad behaviour is found, NERSA is going to be acting in participants' best interest. Should also say, and I suppose for the sake of employers, it is bad behaviour they're looking for. It's not where mistakes happen. Mm-hmm. So if your employer, there's an oversight, it can legitimately happen, there's an oversight, we'd say to employers, contact NERSA yourselves, try and get it sorted, be proactive about it, because we're not looking to go out there and punish people where a mistake happens. It's looking at the bad behaviour elements.
Perfect. So people are wondering then, where can they get impartial advice? So maybe they're either have made their own pension arrangements because the workplace doesn't provide them with a pension. So they've taken out that PRSA, they may be of a certain age, or they may be contributing a certain amount. Where do they go to get that advice to compare what they're doing already compared to what now is the statutory minimum? Or in other cases where you have workplaces that heretofore never had a pension offering, and now auto-enrolment, the clock is ticking down, it's going to kick in, and suddenly your employer is offering you this now workplace pension. How can somebody, again, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, like pensions really, they do have, quite deservedly, we'll have to admit, a bad press. It's a lot of detail that people will get around. Where do they go? Because I know ourselves as union officials, even we're reluctant to give that level of pension advice, especially when somebody is making those arrangements privately. This is not a workplace pension.
Yeah, so again, I mean, it's important to note that the department isn't in a position, and NERSA won't be in a position to give financial advice on people's individual circumstances. Now, there is going to be, and there already is, a wealth of information on my future fund, both on the gov.ie page and on myfuturefund.ie. What we'd say to people is, I suppose, that there are qualified professionals in the financial advice space. They're probably the people that you need to talk to, and I know that can be daunting for people to make that contact. But really, that's where you need to go for the advice. The department can't give you financial advice on this. NERSA won't be able to give you financial advice on this. We can give you the information, and we're more than happy to give you the information. But again, it's a qualified professional that you need to talk to.
Yeah, and we face the things. So we have...
Just on that one, Laura, I wanted to come in. For Fórsa members, we do have free financial advice for them. So they can come directly to Fórsa, and through our query section, you can actually put it through and we can point you in the right direction. We do have a relationship with Cornmarket as well, so we've got free financial advice services through that too that members can access as well. And some of our branches organise some of those events for members locally that they can access it as well. So there is an access capacity for our members to get that information. And that would be the individual advice that would be beneficial for them. On a collective matter, if it's an employer approaching a group of workers who don't have occupational pension, who are saying that we're going to suggest this, that's definitely something you need to come to the union about, because it mightn't be the best outcome for you. It might be something else that it's worse off for you. So definitely, if it's something that's collective that the employer is presenting, that we would say go and speak to your branch, speak to your local rep and speak to the official and see what's the best outcome collectively on that as well.
And I think it's really important to people online to re-emphasize that point Katie is making, that if your employer of many years hasn't offered a pension and suddenly they are, we've seen a lot of media coverage in this, your antennae should be up. And as Katie said, it's really one to bring to your union. So Katie, another one for you. We have a lot of questions coming in from people that are in particular sectors, and I guess this isn't really the venue for that. So if people have those questions around a particular employment or industrial sector, what do you recommend for them?
Well, we do have thousands of different members in thousands of different employments, so each circumstance will be different and unique to that individual, even sometimes within the same employment. So our advice is always to speak to your local rep in the first instance, and then to speak to your branch executive within your local region or your local area. And if that isn't of assistance or you need more bespoke information, you can also contact your official or speak to the divisional representatives as well. So they're closer to your sector, they'll have the information to hand locally, and they'll be able to point you in the right direction.
Perfect. So it is a lot of information, and we're delighted so many people have been signed up and online today. And I don't think you can turn on the television these days for escape the ice cream ad, or stand and wait for a bus or a Lewis or a train in any part of the country without escaping it. But what is your sense, Paul, that the understanding, the level of engagement, that people are busy, they're getting ready for Christmas. Are they really thinking about auto-enrolment the 1st of January?
So, I mean, look, I suppose, to your point earlier, pensions are boring. It's sort of why auto-enrolment's been designed the way it has. There will be people, I suppose, that'll be enrolled, and they won't realise they've been enrolled until they hit 66 and they get a nice letter from NERSA that says, hey, you've got this big pot of money. We're running employee-focused campaigns as well, and advertising, just to let people know that these contributions are going to come out. I think that's probably the most important thing for people, that they don't get too much of a shock when it happens. We've sort of increased that intensity over the month of December. That's going to continue to run into January for people as well, because there's going to be a lot of people that don't get paid until towards the end of January. So it's good to let them know. I mean, I can speak, I suppose, for the employer part as well, and awareness there, and it has really ratcheted up. A lot of employers contacting us. We've done a lot of reach out to employers, running webinars, working with representative groups to talk to them. I think there's a much better level of awareness than this time last year, and look, you'd expect that. The ice cream ad, I think it's been a great success, and we've got to, I suppose, credit our comms unit for that, for for coming up with it. I think it's been a great concept. We've been there at the ploughing to talk to people, and it's the biggest festival in Europe.
Fórsa always have a stand.
So we've been trying to get the message out there to people. But for anyone that hasn't heard it, again, perhaps through the union, it might be a good way to get the message to people. Log on to the website, log on to myfuturefund.ie as well. There's loads of information there for people. You'll be able to see exactly what this means for you. But also, it's automatic. So you don't need to worry about filling out loads and loads and loads of paperwork to be signed up to this. You don't even need to worry about thinking, am I eligible, am I not eligible? NIRS is taking care of all of that. And again, your employer's informed through payroll. You're enrolled. They have to pay over the contributions then.
And I think a lot of people that either they themselves have travelled, spent time maybe in New Zealand or Australia, or have children that have done the same, will be very familiar with the New Zealand Kiwi Saver and the superannuation in Australia. So I do think auto-enrolment for a lot of people, they'll have some familiarity with it. Maybe not the nuts and bolts as you took us through today, but definitely the principle of automatically saving while you're working. So how long do you think it will bed down? Will we be back here this time next year, or will it settle down and we'll be back maybe this time in 3 years' time when the contributions are due to, ratchet up to the 3%?
I mean, look, all things going well, and we've had a pretty smooth launch of the employer end of it. So I think, this time 3 years, but again, we're going to be keeping an eye on those levels of awareness. We're going to be keeping an eye on where that messaging needs to change. I can't speak for NERSA directly because a lot of the functions are going to pass over to them in the new year, but I'm sure they'd be more than happy to work with yourselves to keep getting that message out there, because there's going to be new employees that are coming into this as well. They need to be reached to be told when you start employment, this is quality assured retirement savings are going to be available for you as standard now. But I think as well, again, you look at the likes of MySuper in Australia, and it's just such an integral part of the landscape there now that everyone that moves to Australia knows about it before they move. And this is as well, maybe some of the rationale around the naming of My Future Fund is to make it clear to people that this is their money and give them that sense of ownership about it. And we put it out there for people to workshop it, to see what people liked. It really resonated with people. So I think it has that ability to become part of that national conversation as well. People down the pub even talking about how's your savings doing? I've logged into my account and I've seen I've got X amount. That's all gonna come, I suppose, in time. But yeah, we'll keep looking at it, and NERSA is going to have dedicated communications that they're going to be rolling out as well to try and keep and continue to reach people and educate people on this.
And I think it's going to be a real game changer when we have the My Future Fund app that'll be available later in the year in 2026, that people have. It'll be much easier to compare your funds down the pub rather than logging on. I know that's what me and my friends do on a Friday night, compare pension investments.
Aren't we all just talking about pensions when we're down the pub?
So our final question then before we wrap up, and I suppose it's a good way to end, is talking about you reach the 65, the 66, you have your fund, you've done your bit, you put in what will then be your 6%, drawing down your retirement. What will the drawdown for the pension fund? Will it be a lump sum? Will it be buying a pension product? How is that done? Have we any clarity on that, or is that to come?
So a lot of that is to come. In the initial years, what we're looking at is a lump sum drawdown. There's a few good reasons for this. There's complexity in designing products for people as well. You can always take that lump sum and go off and buy yourself an annuity or an ARF, something like that. That's going to, of course, be open to you. Tax treatment, like I said, similar to PRSA with your you know, tax-free lump sum and then likely trivial tax treatment for the remainder. Another reason for that is that, you know, we do recognise that, especially in the initial years, and it builds in a little bit of time for NERSA to develop these products and look at it sort of holistically. They're not going to be huge pots initially. You know, if someone is enrolled, they're 59 in 6 months, they're enrolled. Your 6 years, you're not going to have a huge pot. There's not a huge amount of value in paying that out slowly to someone. It's better to give it to them sort of upfront in a lump sum. But yes, I mean, it's part of the brief of NERSA, and the department will continue to work with them. The Pensions Authority will be there as well to develop more products for retiring employees, looking at things maybe like annuities. Again, I don't want to second guess what they're going to do. You know, the potential for combination products that maybe don't exist right now, you know, where partially annuity, partially like an ARF. All of these things are going to be considered. I can't second guess what NERSA are going to do. They're an independent body, and they need that independence to be able to make those decisions themselves. But yeah, I suppose, yeah, said a lot, but the simple answer is all those things are going to be looked at by NERSA.
That's perfect. So listen, we're coming to the end of our hour, so it just left me to thank Paul again for giving us his insight and his time, which is an incredibly busy time for you. To also thank Katie, Roisin, the AV team, and everyone at Fórsa for laying this on. As we mentioned, your branch is here, your union is here, NERSA is there, and again, re-emphasise, go on to the website, the Department of Social Protection's website on auto-enrolment, their YouTube, the really top-class information there. So we hope we've done our small bit in demystifying pensions and auto-enrolment in particular, and maybe you too are a pension walk after all this. But thank you and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.